Hello, this is Heather, and I am with my colleague and friend Malcolm in the studio at Able Radio. Hello, Malcolm.
Oh, Heather, this is a strange situation.
It really is.
To find myself being interrogated by you.
I'm in control now.
Yes.
I just wanted to ask you a few questions, like an informal interview, if you will, to find out about your line of work. So, first of all, what is your role at Able Radio?
Okay, I'm program controller for Able Radio. So, essentially, I look after the output of Able Radio as a radio station, but I'm also involved on the management team with regards to the future of the station, some of the activities we do behind the scenes, for example in training, but also extending the model so that we become a national broadcaster.
Would you say that you enjoy this job?
I love it. I had the opportunity of sort of having had a lifetime in media to take early retirement, and I actually found that I didn't enjoy being retired, and I was actually looking for something to do, so I ended up in Scope, a famous disability charity, and it wasn't long before I said, I could build you a radio station, and it was great fun, really, really good fun, but the problem was that Scope wouldn't allow other people with other disabilities to come into their premises, which is how Able Radio started, because we wanted to be an autonomous operation. And so we weren't being controlled by any one party, whether it be a charity or a local organisation, but, so effectively that's what we have today. The route that Able Radio and I've taken on Able Radio is bizarre, because it's almost coming back to the essence of where I started off in radio decades ago.
What were you doing first of all in radio?
Well, even in school, when I was very young, probably 8 or 9, I was saying I only ever wanted to work in radio, media. And in the good old days where you go to have careers advice, they basically said there's no such job and they don't exist, and go away and get qualifications. Don't be silly. Well, so I kind of got involved with discos, and I was doing DJing and nightclubs and that sort of thing. Very young, actually. I mean, I can't, looking back, I don't know how at 14, 15 I was doing nightclubs. In fact, I was even being a DJ in a strip club.
That's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I was also involved in a hospital radio station back that time, so I was presenting and loved the radio experience. I then started a new hospital radio station in the Royal Gwent Hospital, so that was kind of my baby, which I absolutely loved, because it was new. We had very exciting new studio facilities, and the CD had just come in there.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So we had turntables and a CD. But from there, I was always looking at going forward. So I had an opportunity with the BBC. They were running some trials for local radio. So I fronted a BBC Radio Newport, which you would never have heard. It was a 1-week-long trial to see if there was. And out of that came Gwent Radio, which was a BBC station.
Yeah.
I eventually ended up working for a commercial radio station called Gwent Broadcasting, GB Radio. And I went in there initially as a volunteer and took over on the breakfast show. And I kind of did every show there, did a lot of specialist music shows. At the same time, I was writing for national radio. I wrote some scripts for Radio 2 and Radio 4, which were recorded, which was great fun.
That's so cool.
Those are more... kind of a bit of a departure, because I think when you do radio for so long, you actually recognise you're in this goldfish bowl, really, and you want to escape. So I saw writing as a way to do that. But then there was an opportunity in television to go in on the production management side, so I took that and worked for ITV Wales, and I wasn't there that long, but there was a great breakdown in the way the TV industry works. So a few of the directors and myself got together and we set up an independent production studio actually in Cwmbran of all places, because we had a lot of grant money. And we had the likes of Meatloaf recording with us.
Wow.
We recorded with Tom Jones. We did some really good stuff, but unfortunately, as the way a lot of businesses go, actually went under. The company went into liquidation with vast debts. I'm pretty ashamed about that. But it was something out of our control. You get into a sequence where one person doesn't pay you, so you can't pay your staff. And so it's a vicious circle, and then the bank come in and kind of just close the doors and tow your cars off your drive, and they repossess your house and all the rest. And then after that, I set up an independent production company, so I was doing voiceover work, and I was doing some video work, and then here we are, full circle. I'm sure I've done a bit of radio in between.
So that's why your radio voice is so good, because you did voiceovers, and you've got a very distinct radio voice.
Well, I had the privilege of going to the National Broadcasting School, which doesn't exist anymore. And at the time, if you wanted to work in radio, you had a non-regional voice. So you listen to presenters from 20, 30 years ago, and we all have the same tonality in our voices. Yes, I'm aware that there are twangs of a local Welsh accent. However, it's the mid-Atlantic voice. Hey, we're from anywhere in the world. And of course, now the whole industry has become very regional, and a regional accent is a winner now. If you've got a strong regional accent, you will make it in radio. If you sound bland and as if you come from nowhere in particular, you're lost. So it's an interesting change about the industry.
Yeah, I didn't realise that when you were doing that, they were so...
Absolutely, it was the BBC model. Tone. Yeah, it was very much the BBC model.
That's really interesting. I'm going to do some writing about that. I think that's really interesting. So you didn't. What did you do? Something in university like related to, or was that like your?
No, I actually did management, which was bizarre, because I wanted to get into radio, and because I have a medical condition. Okay, I'm a diabetic. That's no big deal, but it was a big deal for the BBC and others. And I went along to interviews and said, I want to work in radio and I want to be a sound technical operator, etc. And I was told quite bluntly, we can't take you on, you're a diabetic. You could go hypo at any time. These days you can't say that. That's discrimination. In those days, we're talking about the 80s. It was rife and a real problem. So it's been interesting to see a complete sea shift in the way that people are thinking about disability. Was that fair or not? It was pretty unfair.
Would you say that you struggled a lot then with that, or would you say it just made you try harder, and
I think
you wouldn't be where you were today if you hadn't been told no?
Absolutely. I wouldn't be involved in a disability-based radio station. Because I would have no awareness of what real discrimination is about. And these guys, okay, I'm not in a wheelchair, so I don't have a physical disability. But to see verbal abuse being thrown at guys with physical disabilities, wheelchair users, is still a fact in 2012. That is a reality. And if we can do something, even in a very small way, to change attitudes towards disability, and I would reckon that probably 2/3 of the UK population has some form of disability, impairment, block in their life. Whether that's mental health, whether that's physical health, whether it's a combination of the both. There are very few people, once you start looking at them and getting to know them, you understand that they've got issues and they've got problems, and quite deep-rooted issues. So many people say, I'm completely fine, I'm brilliant, and then they have a breakdown the next week.
I often find, as I have anxiety disorder, I don't want to tell employers that I have it, because then they may start treating you differently, but then they have equal rights and equal opportunities, so they say that you should tell them if you have a disability. And it's only now that I know that I have that I notice that so many other people have things that they just don't share with other people. And it's a shame that people don't feel like they can share that they have problems, because so many people do have them, and it would surely make it easier if everybody was just really upfront about it and just dealt with it, rather than discriminating against each other.
I think the problem is that we're human beings and we're almost programmed. We take an instant judgment on somebody, and we make that instant judgment by that initial contact within 30 seconds. And kind of going full circle, you look at speed dating, for example. You get 3 minutes with somebody, you know within 3 minutes, you actually know within 30 seconds, are you going to gel with this person or not?
Yeah.
Now, we may not be speed dating here, and you may be decades and decades younger than me, but I knew instantly whether you were going to fit on the radio station or not.
Yeah.
Now, if you throw into the mix a physical disability, perhaps a deformity of some kind, then you're getting a very mixed message. And as I said, not here, but in most places, people will quickly judge.
Yeah.
And it's only given the opportunity to get to know these guys a lot better and get to know the real essence of who they are, then you see the full picture. And in my experience of disabled people, I have met the most wonderful people in the world who have quite chronic disabilities.
Yeah.
I don't know what makes them wonderful, and that doesn't. I don't want to be patronising and say it's wonderful. It's not about their disability. It's not, it's wonderful how they cope. They wouldn't want to hear that. It's not about them coping.
Yeah.
It's about how their attitude of life and going forward and actually being very, three-dimensional. There's no agenda there. They're not out to get you out of a job or whatever else. They're just here.
Yeah, it's like I never ever feel sorry for example, Rosie, because she's so happy all the time and she's really amazing to talk to. And some people may judge when they see her and think, oh, bless, she's in a wheelchair. But I don't feel like that at all. So,
and that is a big problem that I think society has to come across. People don't want sympathy. They don't want that reaction of, oh, bless. And the worst one of all I've heard from disabled people, physically disabled people in particular, I admire you. If you're forced, if you lose your legs, your arms, whatever it is, and then somebody says, I admire you. You can admire somebody if they climb Everest without any arms and legs. That's something to be admired. But to be admired for having a disability is the most patronising and quite honestly pathetic statement that any human being can use towards a disabled person. You've gone way off subject.
I have, but it's interesting because, there are no other radio stations like this. And I think it's an interesting angle to be able to look at it like this and to see that this really is a special place to work. I really, really love working here. And it's, but more radio questions. Would you recommend studying a master's in a radio or music related course to increase chance of employment after education? Because I've spoken to other professionals and they've said no matter if you do a master's or not, you always start at the bottom as a runner or making coffee. And would you say that they're wrong and that there is a point in doing a master's degree?
I've spoken about this. I have spoken on courses and I've spoken to students like yourself about this. And this industry is one of the few industries, and I would say media per se, you do not have to have any formal qualifications. And, some of the great broadcasters do not have any qualifications whatsoever. I think what a degree does, and then a master's on top of that, it shows that you have that depth of intelligence and understanding. You can grasp a subject. And I completely agree that if you are going in at entry level, you're going to make the tea and you're going to be at the same level as anybody else, whether they've got any formal qualification or not. However, it's the next tier. You're far more likely to progress rapidly through the ranks within an organisation, particularly when you look at the organisations such as the BBC, who we have to hold as the iconic employer for media because they employ more people than anybody else. Then they are looking for qualifications all the time. I would argue it doesn't make the best people that they're appointing, but they are definitely bias towards the qualifications. I think it would be fair to say that without a degree, you would not get a step into the BBC these days. You would not get your initial foot in the door. The Masters is a difficult one, and I've had this conversation so many times. If you've got it, and you've got the passion, and you've got that belief that you can make it in radio, television, or media generally, I happen to think that a Masters isn't going to really help that. However, the reality is that there are a heck of a lot of people chasing a very few opportunities. So you've got to do something that makes you stand out from everybody else. The Masters is one way of doing that. But I think more importantly than that is actually sheer experience, honest experience. If you had to spend a year on Masters or a year as an intern on a major radio station, of which there are plenty of opportunities.
I know which I would rather do.
It's the internship. And you're going to get recognised. Or, if you're not up to the job, you'll know. So it's a two-way thing. It's not just the organisation can judge you and say, OK, she's not for us. But also, you may say, actually, I don't think I can cut it in this industry. It's not for me. So, whereas with a Masters, if you decide then media isn't for you, and you go along and want to do another profession, you're actually going to be working again, because somebody's going to look at you and say, well, your whole career to date has been geared towards this media career, and now you want to do something completely different. You want to be a nurse or something. Where's the relevance? And the degree and all that learning is out the window, isn't it? I think, guess what it does? It does show that you have the ability to take on information. But I remember when I was struggling to get around in radio, in the local radio station I mentioned before, Gwent Broadcasting, I was only working on a freelance basis at the time, and a job came up in radio sales at the radio station. Well, very well paid job. And I was interviewed by the sales manager, and he said, I won't give you the job. I know you well. I know you do the job. But he said, your passion is the radio. Whenever you've got time, you come in here, you freelance on Christmas Day. The passion is the radio. It's not sales. So I'm not going to give you the job. I'm not even going to take you further forward, because that's not what you're about. You're about broadcasting, not about selling the product. And I guess there's a parallel that can be drawn on that. So it's a very long-winded answer to a question that I don't think there is really... I see Masters these days as something which is quite convenient in this dire economic situation where very few jobs are available. It's better than being long-term unemployed.
Definitely.
But it's also a costly avenue, because you have to self-fund it, don't you?
Yeah, I think I would much rather continue working here voluntarily for another year, or getting an unpaid job as a runner somewhere, than do a Masters and for it not to guarantee that I would get work afterwards.
Absolutely.
Because I may just feel like, not that I'd wasted my time, because I'm sure I would learn some useful things, but I would be behind then by a year, and I may have missed an opportunity. And
because particularly the large organisations, they don't want you too well grounded. They want to.
They want to be able to teach you.
Absolutely,
don't
they want to mould you into, particularly the BBC. There is a particular way that BBC works, which is very bureaucratic, and it's very accountable, because that's the way it's publicly funded. So there's this vast bureaucracy. So they like to catch you young, they like to get you in, and then you do things the BBC way, which is a fantastic way of working. In a commercial sense, it's a nonsense. It just doesn't stack up. The numbers don't stack up. The tiers and tiers of management structures and accountability and audits and all the rest. But the bottom line is, it is one way. So I got distracted there. So.
It's Justine's bright red hair.
Exactly.
Every time she walks past, I'm like, oh, what's that? I think that you've answered my question, and you've answered all of my questions, really. That was...
Can I ask you a question then?
Of course you can.
Where do you see yourself in 10 years' time?
Oh, that's such a hard question. I'm really interested in radio, but I know that unless I'm really, really different and special, and so there's something unique about me. And unless I work really hard towards it, I know that it is an almost unrealistic aspiration. However, if I want something, and if I can get there.
Which part of radio, though? Radio is a big industry.
I know.
Do you see
to be
yourself
honest,
as a presenter, producer? What?
I would love to be a presenter,
Mm-hmm.
but if I ended up in production or even like planning a show and writing a show, I think I'd be happy to just have an opportunity in that area, because I just enjoy it so much. And I enjoy all the aspects. I enjoy listening to music and arranging what we're going to play on our show, and then editing it afterwards if it needs editing. And I really enjoy all of it. But then if not, then possibly I like writing film music and generally just producing music and writing music. And I love playing the piano. There are lots of things I could do. I could maybe just train really hard and be a session pianist or something, or a session drummer. I could do that as well. So I've got lots of paths to pick, but if I could get my foot in the door in any of those, I would take it instantly without a second thought, because it might lead to something else. And I think you just need to take all the opportunities that you get.
Absolutely.
Just in case.
Good luck.
Thank you very much.